Hello and welcome. It's time to raise your friends and grab your gear. Because this is Nerdclectic News. Alright, welcome to this episode of Nerdclectic News. BeardBrigade coming at you here with a kind of a special episode. Today I'm going to be interviewing one of my fellow guildmates from World of Warcraft. She is probably... I don't know, I wouldn't say this. Well, yeah, I'm going to give you credit and say you're probably the best healer we have in Raid. At least as far as I can tell. I'm not good with numbers. So I will go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hey guys, this is Jen, First Aid for the Win in game. Nice to meet you.
Alright, so as mentioned, I know Jen through World of Warcraft. We play in the same guild, on the same server, I believe, since of all the sharding things.
Yeah.
And we will be interviewing her today. We will be going over 3 topics, and we'll just go ahead and jump here into the first topic. And that first topic is going to be the fact that you are a cosplayer, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And our first question here: how long have you been doing cosplay?
So that's kind of tricky, right? Like serious cosplay for the last 3 years, but I've always kind of been into costuming and dressing up. So as long as I can remember, I started mostly with like Ren Fair. I went and I just remembered being completely like dazzled by all the dresses and it's just pretty dress up, right? So I did some minor cosplays, or not really cosplays for Ren Fair, but minor dressing up, and just over the years kind of like started tweaking my costume more. Then I got more into elf, so I made ears and just got more and more intricate. I went to my first gaming convention. It was Gen Con in California like years ago, and there wasn't a lot of cosplay there. There was a little bit, but that was really the first time the bug kind of hit me, but I was just really nervous to get started. And, I got my first BlizzCon ticket, and that was it. It was okay, I have to do something big. This game's a really big part of my life, and that's kind of what got me motivated to just jump in and try.
Okay. That kind of actually answered the next question there about how you got interested and started. So then, what was like your first official cosplay then?
My first official was Tyrande. I loved her armor. I loved her story arc in the books, mostly in the game. They just kind of make her come off very silly and boy crazy. But in the books, she's just like this really strong warrior, right? I really liked the intricacy of her belly armor as well. It was just very swirly, again, elf-like, which is what I tend to be drawn to.
Okay. And with how long you've been doing it, you said seriously for the last 3 years. How many different
Mhm.
cosplays have you done in that time?
So in the last 3 years, I have done 3 total. I'm really slow. Other cosplayers, I don't know how they do it. They bust stuff out in, a few months, but it takes me time. I think I tend to focus more on sturdiness so that I can wear things more than once or twice, which is something that cosplayers tend to run into is, things just kind of start to fall apart. So 3 big cosplays, but I've done several smaller ones. Like, I don't know if you're into Japanese anime at all, but there's Hayao Miyazaki. I hope I didn't butcher that name. He did Totoro, so I built myself like a Totoro dress. So there's a lot of smaller ones in between there.
Okay. Have you made all of those yourself, or have you gone online and,
Hmm.
and bought parts? Oh, so you have made them.
Nope.
Um,
Yeah, the only things I bought have been shoes, but my shoes have also all been modified with armor that I've built. Everything else, I bought myself a sewing machine. I got a 3D printer. I've gotten into 3D printing design, soldering for LEDs. It's a task.
yeah, I mean that's a lot more work. Now you mentioned that you had built them for to being sturdy. So could I safely assume that you've probably kept all 3 of those cosplays?
Yeah, they're all still pristine. There's a couple of parts I have to kind of improve upon just after wearing specifically my Jaina. Like I'm going to add straps to the top because it'll just be a little bit more comfortable throughout the day. But things like that where, you just wear something and like realize, okay, this can be tweaked or that can be tweaked. That's one thing, but nothing's really like fallen apart on me outside of the TSA breaking my staff, but that's a different story.
Um, Now, what has been kind of the biggest struggle or obstacle you've run into while creating these cosplays?
Time. For sure, time. Well, there's two really that are kind of tied. Time and then just kind of going through the confidence of things. I'm actually super introverted by nature. Um, the only time I really come out of my shell is like in game and at conventions. But when I'm building something and like thinking about like, okay, how is this going to look in a picture? How, is the public going to receive this part? Or how comfortable do I feel exposing, a little bit more skin or a little bit less? Like all those questions kind of become daunting, right? When you're trying to plan everything out. And then once everything's planned out, the timing is crazy because I do have a family and I have work, I have a full-time job, and yeah, trying to figure everything out so that the house isn't suffering. Like I know before BlizzCon for the month before, I didn't clean it. My poor kid was like, "Do you need help with dishes?" And I'm just like, "Yes, please."
Oh yeah, the struggles of being a parent while being on top of everything else. I can relate there. I mean,
Yeah.
we have three kids, so I mean, 11,
Oof.
5, or 11, 6, and 15 months, 16 months now. So
Wow.
yeah, the house is naturally a disaster here, but I can feel that pain. Um, just getting ready just on a day to day basis. Now, with you said that you kind of just reiterating it again that you've been kind of serious into it for the last 3 years. Um, are you looking just to do this as just a hobby like you have been doing from the sounds of it, or are you trying to really run the course and make it more of a career, or maybe even just a stepping stone into a different type of career, whether it be prop making, modeling, or something like that?
So, I started it as just a hobby. This year was kind of a really big turning point for me. I do have cosplay pages, I have business cards, but when I started all that, it was more just, last year after I had a lot of success with my cosplay at BlizzCon. So I'm not sure if I'd want to make a career out of it, but I do like the idea of, making something on the side. I like to create things, so I'm trying to figure out like what the market is missing right now. So there's a couple of big cosplayers. One of them writes a bunch of like how-to books and tutorials. Another one creates patterns and sells them, and she's very successful. She has a line in Joann's now, which is big for cosplayers in fabric. So I'm not really sure what the market is missing, but if I could do something like, one of the ideas I had was like kit cosplays, like, oh, here's a simple cosplay and everything you need to do it plus the instructions. That way people can still kind of build their own thing. That would be cool, but yeah, for right now it's fun, and if it works out, it works out, and if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like you have fun with it, so I mean that's kind of
Mhm.
the important part, right? At the end of the day. Um,
Yeah.
so now getting into a little more depth in terms of crafting for someone who's just getting into it. I mean, you said you've been doing it hardcore for the last 3 years, and you've been kind of doing it on and off most of your life. In terms of for a beginner, when they're making it or when they're setting out to make their first cosplay, what kind of medium or material would you really recommend for a first time cosplayer to use?
So, I mean, really it depends on what people are comfortable with. Every medium has its own strengths and weaknesses. The two main ones are EVA foam and Warbler. Warbler is a thermoplastic. It's a bit more forgiving. You can heat it up with a heat gun and, reshape things if you don't like the way something looks. You can play with it. You can roll it into a ball, create shapes. It's very versatile, but the downside to it is it does take a lot more prep before painting, just to make things look smooth because it is a little bit of a rougher surface that doesn't sand too easily. I mean, you can with a Dremel, but still making things look smooth is difficult. And then the second difficulty is it's heavy. So if you have something that has a lot of armor that you're going to be wearing all day, in cosplays, I'm getting into these things at 5, 6 a.m. and I'm in them until sometimes 1, 2 a.m. So it's a long day. It's very hard on the body. So I tend to stay away from Warbler for that reason. EVA foam is definitely my preference. It's not as forgiving. You can't really stretch it and mold it. They do have really nice grade EVA foam available on a few websites that I can give you. want to add that. But it's really easy to prep. It comes smooth. It's lightweight. It heat forms really well. You can create a lot of really cool detail with heat guns. With I created wood grain details with creating slashes and then heating them up until everything's split up because it's like a medium cell foam. So when you heat it up, all the cells close up, and you can create details that way. And it's cheap. So
Oh,
that's a
and
bonus. It's a lot cheaper than Warbler.
I wouldn't. I mean, foam in general has always been more of the the cheap end of things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely being a beginner, I mean, I would always, at least with my experience, being a beginner, you want to go as cheap as possible and then work your way
Yeah.
into the expensive things. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I mean, you gave a wealth of tips there for materials. Is there any other just general tips or recommendations that you may have for someone just starting out?
Yeah, just explore and play with things. There's a wealth of information online. Kamui Cosplay, she's really big into sharing all her knowledge. She's one of the more famous cosplayers, so she has a wealth of videos, tutorials, books, how-tos. That's basically where I got a lot of my information and knowledge to get started. And then just don't get discouraged. I mean, I think as cosplayers, we tend to like tunnel vision on one piece and we're like, that didn't come out right. But people don't see costumes piece by piece, right? They see the whole thing. They're not looking at like the one detail that you notice is kind of off. So don't get discouraged. Don't stress out. If something doesn't work out, it's cool. My Jaina cosplay, I actually had to shove safety pins in like bottom armor that was by my feet on the skirt thing because it fell off. So I have to figure out how to resecure it, but no one noticed that I had safety pins shoved in it and twisted so that it would stay in place. Yeah, just have fun with it.
All right. Now we have two, well, I guess technically three more questions here in terms of cosplay, and they're a little bit more serious questions than kind of the fun loving that we've been having here. Um, so the first question here, being that you are a cosplayer, but you're a female cosplayer, which is, I would probably say, makes up a bulk of the cosplay community, from at least what
Mm.
I've seen. Now, how do you, as a woman, choose your cosplays and what to cosplay as and what not to cosplay as?
So that's interesting, right? So my first serious cosplay, I was pretty covered up. I was Tyrande. I had the long dress, the long skirt, all of that. So I wasn't overly revealing. I don't have a problem with it, but for me, it's kind of hard, right? Because you're on display. Like when you're in cosplay, you're basically like a character running around. You're part of the experience. So it's already a lot of attention. And like I said, I'm kind of an introvert. So I do tend to stay towards the more, covered up cosplays.
Okay. Um,
But at
and
the same time, I'm looking at doing Void Elf next. So it's a little bit out of my comfort.
yeah, I mean, if you're going with the heritage armor, that's a big step in
Yeah.
the skin direction, I guess you could say.
Well, I'm working on figuring out a way. I think I'm gonna like bring the belt up a little bit higher, so it's just a little bit less belly showing. I don't know. For me, it's kind of difficult. Those cosplays look beautiful, and I mean, for people that choose to go that route, it's good for them. It's excellent. It's harder for me to just stay comfortable and focus on poses and having a good time.
Which makes sense. And I mean, now does with your choice there, I mean, you mentioned that you're an introvert, but at the same time, does your status as a mother come into play when you're deciding on what to choose? I mean, are you thinking about the influence or what your child is going to think when they see you in that costume, or is that not a factor?
Um, I mean, it's a factor, but we're kind of a different family, right? I was young when I had my son. I was 16. So he's turning 16 tomorrow. I'm 32. So we're not super far apart in age. So we have a pretty different kind of relationship. I mean, still definitely very much mother and son. There's rules, there's boundaries, but we also talk very openly about things. When I grew up, that wasn't really an option. Everything was always very hush hush, closed off, and I just wanted to go a different direction with my kids. So when it comes to what I'm going to cosplay, the rule and the way I've kind of taught my son is, women have a right to do with their bodies what they want. you need to respect boundaries. If someone is in a more revealing cosplay or outfit or whatever the case may be, that's not an invitation to think about or feel about a person differently or an invitation to anything. So we've definitely focused a lot on boundaries and body positivity and, just celebrating who you are and what you feel like doing. So it's a factor, but not a huge one.
Okay, and then I think that's a fantastic. I mean, that's kind of the same direction I'm kind of taking our household. Trying to get the kids to be open and communicate with us, so we can keep that open line
Hmm.
of communication and we can explain these things to them as they grow up. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you had mentioned the body positivity, which kind of leads into the final question here for cosplay. Um, for any viewers who may not be aware, it, when you go to a convention, it's completely not uncommon to see signs posted pretty much everywhere, especially if people are going to be in costume at the convention. That you'll see a sign somewhere, either big or small, or in front of a room, outside the convention, even on the flyers. Cosplay is not consent. Now,
Hmm.
that the whole concept of that is because there has been several issues over the years of people taking it a bit too far with when someone's in costume. Now, as you as a female cosplayer, as well as a mother on top of that, what are your thoughts on this concept of cosplay is not consent, as well as what are your feelings about the fact that we have to post signs and things like that, or just how you feel about it in general?
Honestly, I hate that we have to, but I've had my own experiences, and I think people need reminders from time to time that, hey, this is a costume, and like you said, it's not consent just because, it may be a little revealing or um, anything like that. It's a problem. I've experienced it. I've seen it happen. I walk around with my boyfriend. He's basically my cosplay handler. He carries all my stuff, takes pictures, helps with poses, fixes things if they go stray, but he also kind of acts as bodyguard. And it's been quite a few times that he's had to like not get physically aggressive, but like, hey man, like calm down, step away, whatever the case may be.
I mean, and then that is definitely a wonderful boyfriend you have there to be
Yep.
able to step in and do that and kind of act as the hold my purse advocate for your cosplay. Um,
And soldering iron and hot glue guns and everything else, paint, everything I bring with me just in case.
I mean, which a lot of I've seen a lot of, and I've known a lot of other female cosplayers that with their significant other or boyfriend at the time has done that exact thing, and it's not too uncommon to walk by a cosplayer and have her boyfriend sitting in the corner holding staffs and extra bits and
Hmm.
bobs and having the backpack that has everything on it ready to go. Um,
Yep.
I've seen one year in fact I even saw um, it was a small little family, and I'd seen them the day before and they were all in costume, and then I saw them the next day, and it was probably the most brilliant thing I've ever seen at a convention. They actually went around the convention and offered themselves up as service as like first aid for cosplay, and
Oh yeah, those are cool.
the backpack was loaded with strings of all colors and ropes and bits of foam that they could just quickly paint up for you, and they had them on these like wheelie backpacks so they could take the backpack off and it would like unfold and they would have everything they needed. I thought it was the most brilliant thing I'd ever seen, and it was a whole
You'll see
family.
that.
um so I thought that was that was just fantastic. So um I think that covers at least the cosplay topic for the moment, unless there's anything else you want to add or talk about before we move on.
No, I'm good here outside of people that walk around with little cosplay repair stations. You guys are the real heroes, man. Seriously, it's so appreciated.
All right, you heard it there, folks. If you have one of those, you are a hero, and there's no denying it now because it is official. So before we continue, it's time for a diaper dance break. now back to the interview. Moving into our next topic here, we're just going to be talking about gaming and being a gamer in general. So we'll start off here with the first question. How long have you been into gaming?
So when I was super young, I don't remember how old I was. Well, actually, even before that, I've always played Mario board games. I remember Mario 3 was like the first game I was like old enough and coherent enough to play. I was probably like 4 or 5. I would sneak up and out of bed just to play it all night, and my mom would catch me in the morning and get so angry. So I've always loved gaming. My first computer game, I was probably like 10. We were installing a brand new like family computer, one of those like monster size machines, right?
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it came with a disc that had some games preloaded, and I don't know what game this was, but it had a little princess on there, and you ran around and you quested, and it was very MMO-like, but just, a half-hour playthrough. And I played that game every single day, and that was really the bug that got me for computer gaming and MMOs and the nerdier side of things. So,
Um, well, if any of our viewers happens to know what she's talking about, because unfortunately I don't, that game does not sound
yeah.
familiar to me in any way, shape, or form. But then again, I mean, being not too far from you in age at 29, I can't say that I was playing princess video games at age 10. So, um,
Yeah.
so if you happen to know, please leave that in the comments for us, and I will get that information back to Jen, or I'm sure once I get the video posted, Jen will be asking me every day where it is and
Yep.
what's the link for it. Um, so our next question in terms of gaming, um, so like you said, you've been into it for a long time, and obviously we've mentioned I think 3 or 4 times now that we play World of Warcraft, and your cosplays have all been, or at least from the sounds of it, have been Warcraft related. So what other games, either online or offline, do you currently play?
So WoW is like the major one, right? Because cosplay has just been taking so much time. Like I haven't even had enough time to focus on WoW. But we do a lot of family games, a lot of Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey. So you see the theme there with my Switch, right? Also the Zelda for the Switch was amazing. We did that one. I'm waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 avidly. I have been for a few years. It's been what, 12 years since the release of 2? So
It
as soon
sounds
as that
sounds
comes out.
sounds about right.
Yeah, I think they're releasing it in January. It was supposed to be October and they pushed it back again to January. So as soon as that, if that comes out, that'll be the one I'm focusing on. A big one as well. So my son, he was kind of going through a hard time a couple of years ago. Just I think emotionally being, young teen at that point, things were just kind of all over the place like they are when you're a teenager. He got into a game called Night in the Woods that he wanted me to play. He had an emotional connection with it, and I think it was kind of his way of like, hey, I'm trying to reach out and talk to you and tell you how I'm feeling. Play this game, it explains it. And we really bonded over that one. So that's like a normal playthrough. We'll go through that and play it together and just, pass the controller back and forth every couple months.
Okay, and then that is definitely a wonderful. Was that I've found it to be a wonderful experience to be able to sit down and actually share video games with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, granted, the baby he doesn't quite play obviously, but
Well,
it's not
well.
uncommon for him to be in my lap, especially while we raid, as everybody knows at this point, because he just sits in my lap and mutes my mic, and I spend half the raid unable to talk to anybody. Um, without realizing it. But the big thing for me, I mean, we haven't. I don't even want to say that we've even shared anything close in terms of the connection that you described with your son, which I think is a wonderful thing. But my oldest, my stepdaughter, who's 11, we actually sit down. We try to sit down regularly. We haven't too much over the last couple weeks, but um, we would sit down and we've been working on Borderlands 2 together, and we're actually been lately working on one of the DLCs, and it's kicking our butt.
I don't know.
But for some reason, it's gone from me carrying her to now in this DLC she's carrying me. So
That's cool.
um, she has a corrosive gun, and it's kicking everybody's butt, but everyone's kicking my butt as she does it. So I'm dying a lot more now, and it kind of makes me sad that she's actually kind of better at it than I
That's funny.
am. But we still have fun with it. It's just a wonderful experience. So, um, moving into the next question here, before I ramble off too much, is there? I mean, from the sounds of it, it sounds like RPGs are kind of your thing. But do you actually have
Mm,
a preferred genre, theme, or type of setting that you would do you prefer to play?
nope, all of it. I love gaming. For me, it's just the biggest stress release.
As a female gamer, um, this is kind of a more serious question. Um, Seeing as how the gaming industry is, I mean, for lack of a better word, male dominated, or back of letter reference, it's definitely a male dominated kind of field. So it's not uncommon for viewers who don't play video games. It's not uncommon to see female characters be um, kind of over sexualized in many cases, whether it be armor that doesn't cover much, or the features of the female characters being over accentuated to unrealistic sizes. So with that being said, with you being a female gamer, does that how does that make you feel? I mean, does it bother you in any way, shape, or form, or what are your thoughts on that?
So it bothers me only because it's so hard for females anyway. We're always being picked at for something, right? You're too thin, you're too fat, you're whatever the case may be. It's I don't know if males ever experience that, but I mean, like even from my own mother and grandmother, like I went to visit them, and it's oh, you gained a bit of weight here, and you're not eating enough there, and it's such a focus. So I kind of just want to be like, hey guys, like it doesn't help when we have characters that have, a 10-inch waist and triple Fs. That's not realistic.
Right.
And
Um,
it kind of creates that expectation that that's what is expected. So for that reason, it bothers me, but I wouldn't say that I lose sleep over it, you know?
okay. Now, um, kind of a follow-up question that I actually forgot to put in here. I just realized it. Um, I mean, when we look at games, probably, I mean, when me and you were younger, so when we're looking at 10, 15 years ago, we had things like the original Tomb Raider game where, graphics weren't that great, but, we still had Laura Croft with her short shorts and tube top that was way too small. But
Yeah.
now we look at the evolution of games, and we look at more modern games. Uh, the first two that actually come to mind with a female specific hero that have kind of changed the mold, so to speak, was actually the reboot of Tomb Raider with the new Lara Croft, and actually Horizon Zero Dawn. Um, Now, with this reboot of the Tomb Raider series, where they've actually focused it on her being just an action star. There's no focus on, okay, how skimpy can we make her outfit? It's more of, now she's wearing, a snowsuit in the snow. She's wearing,
Hmm.
things that cover her and things like that. I mean, does that give you hope that the gaming industry is finally recognizing that in the last, I would probably say, 5, 10 years, I haven't looked at the statistics recently, that the female gamer portion of the gaming community has actually risen to being a large percentage of it now. Does it give you hopes that characters like these are gonna help bring that over sexualized female character down, or are you
Yep.
still thinking that that's gonna be a thing in the years to come?
Oh, it's definitely still going to be a thing, but I do like that example. And it's not necessarily because the over sexualization, it's just if it's snowing, it's cold. Like let's make it more realistic. Like why should there be a different measure for a male and a female lead character in a game? Like if you look at Zelda with Link when he's running around, if he's in the snow, he has different clothes or he's shivering. You can change his clothes based on his surroundings. So I just like that it makes sense now, you know?
Excellent. Now, kind of delving here, I'm going to be mixing up the next couple because I know you have a list of the questions as well. So I'm going to be mixing them
That's
up here a
okay.
little bit. Um, with in the topic of the industry kind of changing here, what are your thoughts on the industry itself today?
Um, I'm not too sure. I've spent so much time in my hole focused on my cosplay and wow, if I have to say one thing, I think that most of the gaming communities I've been a part of have become so toxic, and that's kind of unfortunate. Um, but then when you go to things like BlizzCon or gaming conventions, that it's so opposite. Everyone's so positive and happy to just like be sharing an experience with you, right? I don't know. I don't understand where that disconnect is. I don't know if it's just like the internet and it's easier to be a troll when you're on the internet, but it's definitely changed gaming since everything's online now. You're playing with anonymous people half the time. It's definitely an interesting dynamic. Like when we grew up, right? If I wanted to play Mario, I'm just in my room playing Mario. Now, if I want to play Mario, I can go online and play with whoever. So it's different. I think I'm old school in terms of that.
Yeah, I can definitely definitely agree with that. I mean, I love getting on Warcraft and being able to share
Hmm.
playing with you guys and kind of to reference something that me and you talked about the other day. There was a discussion we had in Discord going about rating, um,
Hmm.
and I had made. I'm just going to kind of summarize. I'm not going to go look it up and read it quote for quote, but I mean the summary of what I was saying because it was in response to someone who was kind of um, I'm trying to put it nicely. Like they were just kind of making it sound like that we need to be more focused on raid and we need to really push and we need to do better and we need to spend more time, getting the things we need to do what we need to be able to do. Um, but then I kind of, like I admitted to you the other day when we talked about it, I was just having a really bad day at work. We've been dealing with a lot of changes at my job, and a lot of folks have been kind of negative, and the feeling in my office has been kind of low. So to come home and have someone kind of ranting that we needed to be doing better, we need to be spending more time and more in game and more focus on getting the gear, it kind of put me over that edge. And to summarize, I was just like, hey, no, we need to spend more time just having fun and
Yep.
looking at new ways to do it. Um, and I would almost say having that kind of old school feel. I mean, I remember, like you said, you could hook up a thing of Mario and play Mario for a couple hours, and you could get to level 30 and be playing level 30 for 3 days because it was a pain in the butt.
Mhm.
And you would still have fun playing it, and it was difficult, and you had to find new creative ways to do it, or you eventually got to the point where you could do it. Um, but I mean, that was just you sitting by yourself. And like you said, now the environment is toxic, and it's just yeah. I don't see where the I don't understand where the disconnect happens either. Because I mean, I haven't been to a gaming convention, but I've been to a lot of just general conventions. I've been to comic conventions and other just kind of smaller conventions, and there's so much fun and positivity. But then you go online and you look information up about something you saw at a convention, and all you find is the negativity.
Mhm.
And it just there's definitely some kind of disconnect, and there's less constructive criticism on the internet as opposed to it's just all negative and who can come up with the best slang to destroy a product as opposed to actually providing critical feedback to help someone improve or help a company improve the product.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just concerning because everything is kind of going that way. You see a lot of VR and things coming out. Like, it just, what is that going to look like
Oh,
10, 20 years from now?
that scares the crap out of me, to be honest.
I know, right?
Um,
Exciting though.
which kind of well, this kind of has led us into the next two questions. Um, well, I'll kind of go with the on the topic of toxicness here. Um, in in all my years as a gamer, I've seen newscasts, I've read articles, um, and I've even seen it firsthand of female gamers who get picked on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be a streamer or it just be, some high school girl, middle school age girl who's getting picked on because she's a female gamer, regardless of how
Yep.
good or not good she is. Because she is a girl, she's getting picked on. So
Yep.
you, as a female gamer, and having been a female gamer for as long as you have been, and more specifically in the direction of online gaming, has that ever presented a challenge for you, or have you received that negative feedback personally in your life from other players, and how have you? Kind of a follow-up thing I would like to get your take on is how have you dealt with that, and how have you moved past that obstacle?
It's a struggle. So back in vanilla in BC, I used to run a guild and I'd run raid, and I don't know if you played back then, but it was the massive 40-man raids. That did go down to 25-man in BC, but you didn't have things like LFR. You couldn't post your group, so you would literally have to sit and spam and find people. So you got a lot of strangers in group. Pretty much every single raid, I would get some kind of sexual whisper or something. If I just didn't respond, then it became hateful and aggressive. So holding raid groups together was actually difficult specifically because of that. I hate to say it. So we actually had another member of our guild start to run the raids, and they ran much smoother because we didn't have to keep finding new pugs because of the harassment. Um, yeah, it was a real struggle. It's gotten easier over the years. I think the WoW population has kind of aged together. So as the time has gone by, I get that less and less, but it still comes up from time to time.
I mean, and that's I mean, in terms of Warcraft, I mean, it's good to hear. I mean, since I've been back, I've been playing now because I played during vanilla and BC, and
Mhm.
then I kind of was on and off here and there over the years, and then I heard about BFA coming out. I heard about Classic, and I got really kind of gung ho and because seeing a lot of the changes and stuff, and with my wife's permission, was able to get back into it. Um, and I'm very thankful for my wife letting me do as much gaming as I do on WoW. I'm still no hardcore player. I'm very casual, but to give me the opportunity to get back into it and see the community again,
Yeah.
and see a lot of the positivity. I mean, yeah, there's still that negativity out there, and I've seen it here and there, but there is still definitely, it's such a positive. At least out of all the MMOs I've played, Warcraft has always found a way to stay positive and community centric in a weird way. Um,
Yeah.
Everyone may be having crazy talks in barons or in trade chat or
I
whatever
was just
chat
gonna say
channel,
stay out of Baron's chat.
but in the weirdest way though, it still brings people together, and you can see it and see people sitting there and they've never talked to each other before. They could be on opposite ends of the country or even the world, and there they are, telling Chuck Norris jokes or and tearing somebody apart for asking a question, but everyone's
Yeah.
having fun with it. Now um, with kind of looking at just the direction of video games, and you mentioned VR. Um, we've evolved from pen and paper games. We started with war games, then we started getting things like Dungeons and Dragons, thanks to Gary Gygax. Then we started getting Pong and Tetris, and then we got Mario, and then we had the PlayStation, the Xbox with Halo and Final Fantasies, and we've gone through all of these things and eventually have gotten to where we are now. And with the latest breakthrough in technology, we now have the virtual reality coming out, and it's not too uncommon to see um, every so often a new VR game being announced and being advertised on TV, or an older game being remade with the VR setting. So, what are your thoughts about where gaming is going in terms of this direction, and what do you like this direction, or do you not like this direction and that it's going?
I'm actually super excited. I had my first experience with VR probably last year, and one of my friends just got like the Sony VR thing. And we played for, it was like the whole day. We basically just busted open a case of beer and started playing with the VR, but it really is amazing. I did this shark one where you're going on like this shark dive experience, and you really do feel immersed in the environment that you're in, right? So the idea of like, hey, maybe one day in the future I can pop on my VR and like actually go raid with you guys. That would be so cool. I'm really excited for it.
Now that
Plus,
actually does sound pretty. Pop on your VR set and go raiding in Warcraft. That would actually, I'd have some fun with that. First person view
yeah,
as a survival hunter. I could I could dig that.
I
Um,
could too. I'd like to have an option there because sometimes I want to just be lazy, right? Sit in my chair, hang out.
right, covered in Cheetos and beer. That's
Basically, yeah.
um. Now I have kind of a follow up question with the concept of VR because it I just thought of this thought just came to mind about something I dealt with when I went to game design school. And for the viewers, I haven't mentioned this before. I did attend a full academic year for game design. Fortunately, I did not finish my degree. However, I did have some, education in terms of game development. And one of the classes I had, we had to do a report on upcoming technology. And we had one of the kids in my class did a report on VR and advances and potential applications of VR for the future that were in development, that they're actually physically working on to get this to happen. And one of those is actually an implant that'll allow you to basically attach some kind of VR headset and it'll work and activate through your brain synapses, which is actually kind of a scary thought to me personally because the thought that came down the line, because a lot of the things that he brought up in his report were things like um, ease of access to the internet, being able to transition from technology and playing games, all of convenience of life type of things. But at the same time, when we look at technology today, we have the new chips in all of our debit and credit cards, or the most part, I think we all do. And one of the big things that has happened with those chips is that people have now created a program on their phone where they can walk by you, bump into you, and they can steal your card information without ever having to take your card out of your wallet, just because it'll read the digital print of that chip in your card. What's to stop somebody with VR, if VR were to advance in that kind of direction, where you say you have this kind of implant in your head, or you have some kind of thing where your information is stored through your VR headset, what's going to stop somebody from, or how does it make you feel that with the potential that there could be a hacker out there who devises a way to hack your VR system and ruin your experience or steal your information or maybe even steal your thoughts? I know it's kind of a weird out there question, but it's still want to kind of get your take on
No, it's cool. So there's two sides of me to that one. You know, the first half, like, if I could be a Cylon, I totally would. If I could augment with like robotic parts, I think that's the coolest thing in the world. I would have literally no problem with that. Which is kind of a weird take, right? But the other half of me, I do IT security for a living. I work with a group of hackers in-house that kind of like break things down of, oh, this is how we would do this. So that side of me, like the more logical side of me is like, oh, that seems horrifying, you know? Like my head kind of goes in weird directions. Like what if someone can steal your thoughts? Or what if someone can implant thoughts, you know?
it. Oh,
That to me is
I never even,
terrifying.
yeah, implanting of thoughts. I mean, I hate to go in the direction of Inception, but
Yeah, basically, you
someone
know,
putting a
like
thought
what's
or
to
idea. Yeah, that's even scarier as a thought. I was not aware that you worked in IT security, so that was actually kind of the perfect question
yeah.
for you in a way. Um,
No, and it's totally scary if you think about, you know, I'm very much you know, I don't trust my government. I love my country. I don't trust my government. What's to stop them from, you know, manipulating an entire population in a direction? What's, you know, the possibilities are endless there. So for that reason, I'd like to keep my brain to myself.
no,
Yeah.
just to clarify for viewers, this is not a conspiracy. This is not.
No, 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 no.
We're
I
not.
just go crazy with thoughts.
This is just a hypothetical. I mean, something like this probably. I mean, if we see it in our lifetime, I would be
Yeah.
surprised. Will our kids see something like this? I'm sure they probably will.
Hmm.
But it's still kind of fun to think about, especially because that has been brought up in such a recent time frame to me. Because I mean, it was only in school. It's been 3 years now, no, 4 years since I was in school. So I mean, that was just 4 years ago. So I mean, it's interesting to think about that was something that was in its infancy and development. I mean, I may even actually look it up after this to see where it is now in terms of something like that. So, um,
Yeah, they talk about medical implants for that too, that they can like put in your skin and it'll monitor your entire body. So that there's a lot of talk about implants to that effect.
oh, and I mean, with me, I mean, you had mentioned you had no problem becoming, part robot. Um,
Nope.
in a way, honestly, I kind of feel the same way. I suffer through arthritis pain in my lower back, and I have since I was 20. I was diagnosed with, well, I wasn't officially diagnosed until I was like 25, so it took them 5 years to figure out it was arthritis. But um, I mean, I would give anything to get rid of that friggin' pain. Um,
Totally understand. I've got my own autoimmune issues, which, pose challenges with cosplay that I'm just like, all right, just replace stuff. I'm cool with it.
right? I mean, I would be totally down for that, but at the same time, we get into that scary thought of having an implant or having a
Yeah,
computer that runs part of my body. What's to stop someone from hacking that information or taking over that information and changing it? Um,
nothing.
right.
Curiosity.
I mean, yeah, for all I know, it's going to be some 16-year-old kid who's bored at his computer desk who says, "I'm going to screw with this guy's robotic limb and have it, choke himself or something." I mean, that scares the crap out of me. But at the same time, I still want to be half robot just because I want to get rid of that pain and I really want a new back. So, um, before we ramble too farther onto that, we'll get to the last question so we can transition here to the last topic. Um, you had mentioned being really excited for Kingdom Hearts 3. Um, with this next year coming up, because we're in early November as of the recording. Um, are there any other games other than Kingdom Hearts that are coming out either before the end of the year or within the next year that you're really excited for?
Honestly, I've checked out so much just with trying to get ready for BlizzCon. I put so much on my plate. I haven't been able to look at anything yet. This is my first weekend free in the last 7 or 8 months, and I slept in, and it's the first time I've done that in months. So that's definitely something I'm really looking forward to just diving back into, just figuring out what's coming up. What did I miss? I really only picked up Zelda and Mario Party in like the last 6 months. That's it. It's been slow gaming for me this year. I'm really excited to just dive back in.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, having I guess he's not really a newborn anymore, but um, over the last year, kind of definitely slowed the pace in terms of trying to pick up anything new and because a $60 video game or a $60 box of diapers is kind of a hard choice to make. Um, do I
Yeah.
do I really want that shiny new toy or do I want my child to have a clean butt? I gonna have to go with the clean butt to be honest, but that's not the whole. I mean, part of it's just to really focus on being a dad too. So um, now with that, we will kind of move into our third and final topic here, um, being a parent. So, um, with being a parent, in terms of cosplay, we kind of talked about him being or your son having a factor on how you choose your cosplays or how your cosplay ends up. Um, since I mean, you said you were only really into it the last 3 years hardcore, but you've kind of always been into costuming. After you had your son, did you look at costuming and cosplay um, any differently, and as well as did you look at gaming any differently?
Cosplay, no, not too differently. Outside of just wanting to make sure that my child understands the difference between, respecting a body and a woman's right to dress however she pleases. That's always been a big focus, and I think that costuming and cosplay influenced that quite a lot. Um, In terms of gaming, he's a big gamer. We both love games. It's something we share, which is super fortunate. But I do worry with all the toxicity we talked about and negativity. I don't really want him to fall into that category of always looking for something to complain about or what's wrong with something. And he can tend to lean in that direction sometimes. And it's, pulling him back like, look, it's ignore the internet trolls, don't take things personally. Don't let that poison your point of view on something. That's been a big struggle, especially with a younger mind, they're forming so much.
Yeah, and I can kind of relate to that with Arliss. Um, now, with I kind of built this into the question already, but I kind of reiterate it. Do you ever kind of stop and think about um, the influence that gaming or even just you cosplaying has on your child? I mean, do you stop to think that, hey, if I cosplay, is this having a positive impact or positive impact on him, um, or with gaming, like when you pick up a certain game or you even purchase him a certain game, do you ever stop before you purchase that to think about the kind of influence that would have on him?
Yeah, I think I do that a lot, but I always try to find the positives in things, like for example, with my cosplay, it takes a lot of time, but we've also used that as a lesson of like, look, when you set your mind to doing something, like follow through and get things completed and have pride in your work and do a good job with things. So with cosplay, it, I don't. I think it's been mostly positive that I've tried to point out. I mean, he's also seen the meltdowns when, I worked on something for a month and it breaks and I cry, but I still try to spin that with it's okay to be disappointed, just pick yourself back up.
Okay.
With gaming, yeah, there's really not much positivity I can spin out of it outside of, teamwork and don't get upset when you die and, learn to let things just kind of roll off. Don't get super intense with things.
Okay. Now, kind of along the same lines here, with the game ratings these days. We have like teen for teen and PG and R and whatever else. I honestly haven't looked at an actual rating of a video game in forever.
Yeah.
Um, which was probably a bad thing as a parent, but um,
Yeah. Well, okay.
um, on your end, did you stop to look at the game's rating, like what the game is actually rated, or with your son being older, is that not really something you kind of keep in mind?
I mean, I definitely keep it in mind. I don't think that I mean, him being older, when he was younger, I definitely kept it more like age appropriate, right? But now that he's older, it's more of a, okay, if you really want to play that game, we're going to sit and we're going to have a talk. We're going to put things into context. We're going to, discuss things.
Okay. Um, that is probably something I need to do a better job of personally, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, it's uh, definitely a great thing to do. Sitting down and talking to kids, and explaining the games to them a little bit better so that they do have a better context.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we usually try to keep it very simple. This is a game you can't watch, or this is a game you can watch. We keep
Yeah,
it very
for
simple
sure
in
when
our
they're
house.
younger like that.
Um, that's probably something with since I'm especially like a game like Borderlands that I'm playing with my oldest, sitting down and actually having a discussion with her in terms of, okay, it's not good to shoot somebody, and it's not necessarily funny to see somebody's head explode. Um, it's probably something you probably need to sit down and have a little bit more of a conversation with her being
Yeah.
older. But at the same time, she knows that it's in good fun too. So um, she kind of understands that because her uncle, before I became part of her life, her uncle was a big gamer as well. So my brother-in-law, um, so he's been playing games like Borderlands and BioShock since she was 5 or 6. So um, with being a parent though, um, I know at least on my end, between working a full-time job, coming home and trying to be the best dad that I can be, and then still try to find time to not only play Warcraft, but just enjoy games in general and other things that I enjoy. Balancing all of those things is not an easy task. So how do you, being a mom and a cosplayer and a gamer and a full-time employee, um, especially in an IT security job, how do you balance that, or how do you is that difficult for you to balance, or is it just something you could do naturally?
I think I'm super fortunate, right? Both my kid and my partner are both gamers. My partner also does IT security. We kind of make most of those things group activities. I mean, my cosplay I'm usually building, but it's not uncommon. My kid's a very artistic mind, so I'll ask him his opinion on things. He gets involved with the projects, so he's not necessarily building or painting anything. I kind of have a rule about that. If something gets messed up, I want it to be me that messes it up so that I'm not angry at anybody. So, yeah, but he's definitely involved. So it doesn't feel like I'm sacrificing time with the family. Usually when I game, I'm sitting on the couch next to both my kid and my partner, and we either all have laptops out or someone's watching a movie. We're still engaged. Work is always a struggle. I think everyone has that, but I do tend to just, I come home and I leave work at work. I'm not one of those people that stresses out about what happened at the job once I leave. So,
Okay. Um, Now, in terms of how, because we've talked a bunch about um, how your child influences some of your decision making. Now, in terms of gaming, and the reason I bring this question up is because I do it. Does your child influence your gaming habits? By which I mean, do you make characters that would look like your child, or look like what you would envision your child looking like when they're older? Um, I mean, do you pick a class or a race for your character based on, something that your child enjoys or thinks looks cool, or just finds fun? Like, part of the reason I made my character a Worgen hunter that I currently play at Warcraft was my son was sitting in my lap, and when I picked the Worgen, he went ooh ooh, and then when I changed it, he stood up in my lap and he kept poking at it. So I made the Worgen character because he liked it. So is that something that you do personally, or has it ever happened for you?
yeah, I'd say more when he was younger, not so much anymore. But playing WoW with my son on my lap was something that I used to do well. And then later on, I got him like this. I would just set him right next to me, and he would watch me play. And eventually, I handed him a keyboard, and he thought he was playing. So definitely, I picked characters that would be more engaging, things that he reacted to. Very, very similar. Now, no, not so much. He's older. He doesn't really care, but I do find it interesting. We both ended up healing. We both play priests as our main, so we definitely went for a very similar type of character.
Do you think he? Just as a follow up question to that, do you think he picked Priest because of the connection that the two of you had, and he just kind of is following in your footsteps,
I
or?
think so, yeah. No, definitely 100%. We've got a really close relationship, and I think he was just initially drawn to that. Every character he's played has been one of the ones that I've mained. So I think really now that he's older, I influence more of his decisions in game and the vice versa.
Um, Now, that I kind of already we touched on a bunch of times here. You obviously play games with your son, um, so I mean it's kind of goofy for me to ask you if you currently play with him. Now,
Yep.
you had mentioned you kind of play Warcraft now with him to some extent. You also played now I forget the name of it, Night in the Woods you mentioned earlier. Um, and you also brought up like Mario Party and things like that. So I imagine you probably play those games with him then.
Oh yeah, regularly. We had a full-on Mario Party session yesterday. We had friends over. It was really fun. Um, we do tend to pick on each other more in those kinds of games. Like I stole stars from him and all kinds of stuff, but it's all in fun, right? Like we'll just kind of target each other in that respect and just have a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I do that with my oldest all the time. Um,
Yeah,
I'll dive in and try to steal loot from her or something before she has a chance to get it, but then she turns around and does it to me, so it's all good.
exactly. It goes
Um,
right back.
Um, and then I'll pick on her when she's playing something by herself, and especially if she puts in her earbuds and is talking to some of her friends, I'll go over and try and embarrass her. But I think that's just kind of a parent thing to do these days. Um,
Hmm.
so kind of our last question here, at least the last question that I have for you, um, in terms of someone who is a new parent, or I guess I'll reword this here. So for any viewers or anyone who watches this video who is becoming a parent for the first time or has just become a parent for the first time. So either they're sitting in that 9 month waiting period, waiting for the baby to come out, or that baby has come out and they're getting no sleep, as we both well know. Um, and this viewer is a gamer or even a cosplayer. Um, what kind of tips would you have for that parent in whether it be how to still maintain being a gamer while having a baby, or um, what kind of just kind of your thoughts and feelings on what you would tell someone who's becoming a parent and is in kind of the community and interests that we're into.
So first thing is don't freak out. The first 6 months is hard for everybody. Like you're like you said, you're not sleeping, you're not eating right. You're just kind of in zombie mode, right? So don't think that that's going to be your reality forever because it's absolutely not the case. After you get past like the initial infancy stage, just what you can to engage your child. And I mean, they're 100% going to have their own interests, so it's not going to work for everybody. But I think you've done a wonderful job with it as well. Like you have your son sitting in your lap, you still raid. Just engage your kid and involve them. And more often than not, they're just happy to sit and spend time with you. So you can make all of those things, all of your hobbies, time that you can spend with your kid versus being this thing that you just have to find time for. That's the biggest thing. It's worked out so well for me. It sounds like it's working for you too.
I do the best I can with it. I mean, sometimes it's hard to raid when you have a baby that's sitting in your lap, jumping up and down, going ooh 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 ooh. Um, Especially when you're trying to tell people something and then you've been hitting
Yeah.
that push to talk button for 30 minutes and you finally put them down and then you get back and you're talking away and then you look down and find out that your mic's been muted the whole time. Um,
Yep.
that's definitely a struggle, but like like you said, just keeping them engaged and involved in what you're doing, but making that positive spin on it as well, like you mentioned earlier. Uh, all of that is I 100% agree with. Um, like a good example, like my game with my oldest, or newborn, or my youngest. He sits on my lap. Now my oldest is my stepdaughter, so not her real dad, unfortunately. And then we have a middle child, my stepson, who's 6. Um, now he's only recently getting into gaming, but when I first came out here, I tried to get him involved, and he, like you said, each kid has their own interest. He's more interested in running around, jumping around, and playing with his toys. Um, but like he'll love to actually sit down and watch me and my stepdaughter play. Um, he just doesn't want to pick up a controller and play. Um, so definitely, I, you know, keeping that in mind and not forcing the child to try and play,
Yeah.
because that's just going to have a negative uh, uh, outcome. At least I think it's going to have a negative outcome if you try to force them to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah, for sure. And there's plenty of times where we, like I said earlier, I'll just pop out WoW on my laptop while everyone's watching a movie, or sometimes my partner and my son will play Mario Kart or something while I'm playing WoW. We're still in the same space and we're still engaged in conversation, but we don't necessarily have to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. I mean, there's been plenty of times where one of the kids will be watching a TV show while I'm gaming, or um, or they'll be because the way our kind of area is set up is that we have our living room TV and the computer in the living room, and my daughter's room is actually just on my right, so I can lean over and look at her and talk to her, or I can look to my left and talk to my wife as she's sitting in her room. Um, so I'm like kind of in the middle of everybody, which can
Oh,
get
I am too.
can get really hectic, I can say, especially when everyone's running around yelling and screaming and having a good old time. Um, but the same thing, like I can sit here and I can still engage with the family while my wife watches a movie, or while my stepson and son watch a show, or while my daughter's doing her thing, or if she's out here gaming, or whatever it may be. So yeah, definitely having that positive spin and just interacting and having that understanding. Um, one thing I do want to bring up as my tip for a new parent, if you don't mind, um, is don't feel like once your child is born or children are born that, like you mentioned, for the 6 months you're kind of in zombie mode. Don't feel like you mentioned don't feel like that's the way it's going to always be, but don't also feel like you're never going to game again. Because there's been plenty of times, especially with the baby, where I have been in the middle of something. I have literally thrown my controller across the room and been across the room to take care of my child, first and foremost. Um, you know, and like for a lot of other gamers that I've seen, I've seen horrible news articles of the parent who ignores their child because they're doing something, and then something horrible happens to the child. You know, you've gone through the effort of making sure that you're bringing this loved one into the world. It's okay to put the controller down. And don't ever be afraid that you're going to lose progress just because you need to take care of your child. Your child is the important part of your life, and at the end of the day, it's a video game. Um, you'll have plenty of time as they get older to enjoy things with them and have things with them and have that time. Um, and just always put them first. Don't never put gaming first. Is kind of what I have to say. So with that, um, that is all of the questions that I had for you, Jen. Is there anything else you want to add, or anything you want to ask me, or anything?
I don't think so. We pretty much covered a lot, right? And good point on just always putting your kids first, even when it comes to gaming. I mean, you can still come back and get back to what you were doing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
But no, I think I'm good. We covered a lot, and thank you so much for your time.
oh no, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you willing to be kind of my first victim with this. I guess you could say. My wife is laughing at me in the background because it's true. Um, because you are the first person that I've reached out to so far. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your day from gaming and your family to listen to me banter and answer my questions. I,
Not a problem.
I really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you, and it's definitely been wonderful having you on. I look forward to getting back through and editing this and getting it up, hopefully in the near future, as long as I can get everything done that I need to get done. Um, Before we wrap it up, though, you had mentioned earlier that you have like a cosplay page. Do you want to go ahead and just plug any kind of social media or
Yeah,
anything that you have for
sure.
that?
Yeah, I've got Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter set up, and it's Jenny B Cosplay, just like it sounds, Jenny and then BEE. And then if we can put it in the comments, that'd be cool. I can get you links to them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, if you want to shoot me over any links, we will go ahead and, or I should say, we'll go ahead and put those down in the comments below. I'll link the best I can her social media is there for everybody. You had mentioned too earlier you had some links that you were thinking about sharing. I can go ahead
Yeah,
and throw those
tips and
into.
tricks.
Cool. I'll make sure we get those added. Um, Other than that, thank you again so much, Jen, for joining me here today. And for all those viewers out there, whether you're a parent or not, just keep doing what you're doing, and have fun, and make sure that we're keeping the community positive, we're keeping it constructive. And we had mentioned me and Jen throughout the show, the toxicity lately of the gaming environment. Let's let's come together as a community and try to eliminate as much of that as we can. Thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, if you've liked what we've been talking about today, or you liked listening to my terribly sick voice today, or you liked listening to Jen's voice, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.